And we are live. Hello and welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I'm your host, David Papiden.
I'm your co-host, James McVeigh.
And we are Fermenting Opinions, the podcast in search of a more palatable political ferment. Tonight on our Fermenting Opinions Hangout, this is May 9th, 2018. And this is sort of a revisit to the topic that we covered in our last episode on Incel and what that is and what that means and where it came from. And, you know, what is the experience of people who identify with that label? And here with us tonight, we have a person who identifies, as my understanding, as Incel, and some of our friends of the Ferment, essentially, people who enjoy, you know, what we do more or less in our content. And we're just here to have a conversation about it.
And I was going to say, we're actually joined by another friend of ours. Will's here now, too. Cool. Will, can you hear us?
Yep.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah, that was perfect timing on your part, by the way, because we just started the broadcast, so you're in. Will was our interview guest from last week.
He was.
We had a really interesting conversation with him, and a lot of our listeners gave us feedback on it, and I think they had, you know, as many answers as you gave probably led to more questions. And, you know, and so we're just here to kind of explore that a little bit. But I guess to get us started, Will or Nick, who's there with us, can you explain to us a little bit, just for people who maybe didn't listen to the episode and don't exactly understand what Incel even is or where it came from? Can you give us a little bit of a background on that and where you guys sort of fall within that sort of category?
I'll let you go first, Will.
Okay, sure. Can you still?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, yeah. You sound good. Well, you did. No, I don't hear you.
Can you also have him turn the lights on? I can't see.
Now? Well, seeing
I can hear you.
Yeah, seeing's not necessarily too important too, so we hope to cut this as a podcast mainly, so we're not.
It might also happen, but in other case,
okay, you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you asked what incel means.
Yes, and more specifically, what does it mean to you as far as you define yourself that way? I know we kind of covered this last week, or was it last week or the week before? But either way, just as a quick recap that we kind of want to run through for our listeners who are joining us for this.
Sure, yeah. So I would say incel means just strictly involuntarily celibate, and it can also mean like a subculture and a collection of different forums out there on the internet, like incels.me or the group that Nick and I are in called Incelistan, or 4chan/R9K or loveshy.com. It's just mainly a life circumstance where you want to have a sexual partner but haven't been able to find one for 6+ months.
Okay.
How did, and I think Nick, before we went on, you sort of had some objections to that metric. Does it feel at all arbitrary to you to say 6 months?
Yeah, the 6 months. In my opinion, it's more, and most people will disagree with me on this, but for me, it's more of just for whatever reason, people that are incels are just bad their whole lives at finding a meaningful relationship, hooking up. People who just don't get the game, as a lot of people call it. At least that's where I fall.
Okay. And so earlier, like I said, we were kind of just batting this thing around. It seems strange, at least from my opinion, you know, from incels I've spoken with and everything, I don't think I've ever spoken to an incel who is a virgin. You know, it's much more a sense of they were once sexually active, and then for whatever reason, it came to an end in the sense of they started striking out, or they wanted something more meaningful or something like that. I don't know what it is, but then they fall within the 6 month metric or whatever, and somehow you are attracted to this idea of identifying this way, which is something that I personally have questions about. Is how do you come to identify yourself as incel and to some degree identify with a movement or whatever you would call it?
Nick, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. For a while, I was never in any incel community for yeah, for quite a while until pretty much just got into college and realized that, hey, there are other people out there who are absolutely terrible, meeting and talking to women as bad as I am. So then I was just started looking into it and seeing that other people have somewhat similar situations. Like how you guys said before that people that were sexually active can now call themselves incels, which I believe they can. It's just for me, my whole life I have been terrible with it. So
Okay.
I just even if, like I said, I did have sex not too long ago, but for the first time in my life, so by the 6 month metric, that means I'm no longer an incel or intel for another 5 months.
Yeah, I think that was you. We had a sort of a group chat before this thing started. I guess that was you who was saying that, yes, recently, you had, a sexual experience, but like, does that really, you described it more or less as like a fluke, and like that doesn't really change, your perspective on the world, so to speak, or really change where you're at, because if it's a fluke, if it's not something that's going to continue, you're still in that, that quote unquote status, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I met a girl that lives in Canada via Encelistan. That's probably not a
Okay.
great way of continuing online dating.
Sure. It looks like we're being joined by Melissa. Melissa, welcome. We kind of just trying to jump into this understanding. Hey, nice foot.
Nice foot. Did you get your staples out, Melissa?
Yes, I got the staples out this afternoon. They put me in a walking cast, but I kind of have to walk with crutches for the next couple of weeks. Well, technically for the next 4 weeks. And then I go back in a month, and I should be in a boot by then.
Gotcha. Melissa, do you have headphones?
I got to find them.
Okay, please find them, because I can hear myself, and that's not going to be great.
Okay.
So,
sorry.
Anyway, yeah, let's get back to it.
Nick, what I was going to ask you, I guess, is that you had this sexual experience with this girl from Encelistan, right? So was she an incel as well?
No, she wasn't. She just, I don't know the initial reason why she joined. She probably just, oh, this group looks similar to Ancapistan. Why not join it?
Okay, sure.
Well,
I don't
know what that is.
Could be any of a number of reasons.
Okay.
This is just kind of what I was curious about. But so you had the sexual experience, and obviously you're kind of like, well, that doesn't count.
It's not that it doesn't count. It's that it was a one-time thing that won't continue.
Yeah, it wasn't really. I guess the feeling I get, at least, is it's not fulfilling.
I mean, I enjoyed it, but it's more of like someone that wins the lottery isn't good at making money. They just get lucky.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good analogy.
It is a great analogy,
because it doesn't really change,
Mm-hmm.
your day to day. It doesn't really change, sort of where you are in the world.
Sure.
Because I guess my understanding of a big part of it is not just sex, but it's the validation from sex, and it's being of a I don't want to use the word status again, but I can't think of a better term here.
No, I know.
The status of someone who can engage normatively with having sexual partners and having relationships, which I think is probably the more important aspect of it, of like you're not in a relationship with the person that you slept with, right? Because you said it's a one-time thing, it's not going to happen again. That sounds like not a relationship to me.
Yeah.
And maybe I think that's really maybe the bigger issue at hand.
Yeah, it's probably, if it continued for a while, I might have a problem still calling myself an incel, but at the moment, because it was just a one-time thing. And for me, it's not as much of the validation that I'm particularly after. I guess in a way, connection, validation.
Yeah, sorry. I think both of us are
similar.
using that term on a level that's much more psychological or philosophical on validation. It's not to say something shallowly, but more in the sense of like it's soothing, or it's filling the void that you feel that drives you towards this identity of incel.
Right now, and it was sort of echoing, I guess, from our conversation last week with William talking about like, well, the one of the first objections that you guys hear all the time is like, oh, you haven't had sex in X amount of time or ever maybe, and like, well, why don't you just like find a prostitute or something like that? And it's like from what the way William described, and please correct me if I've got this wrong, Will, that like you guys don't do that or won't go there because it's not actually, essentially going to make you feel any better because you're not feeling validated by what you're doing. It's just, it's actually the opposite of validation that I am so, stuck in this situation. The only way I can have sex at all is to pay somebody. It's not because they like me or they're into me or anything else like that. And it's not because I'm attractive enough to that person where they would want to have sex with me. It's only because of the money. And so like, because of that, there's no validation. And that's an important aspect of it. Well, would you concur with that or?
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's some debate in the incel communities as to whether or not using a prostitute counts, but most people would say that it still keeps you within the realm of inceldom for the reasons that you brought up. And we even have a word for that. We call it escort cell. If you've been using escorts for a while and haven't been with like a quote unquote civilian woman. So like exactly what you said, just it's mainly for we're not just looking for sex, we're looking for a sexual companion and sexual intimacy, stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Validation.
Does anyone else have any thoughts about that? Joanne, you want to chime in or?
Oh, I'm taking it in, buddy.
Okay.
I'm sitting here thinking, oh wait, let me.
Go ahead.
So you can't, it's all about the relationship. It's not actually about the sex.
Yeah.
In itself. Yeah. Okay.
And say this is, and you guys are, there are different, from what I understand, there's different subsets of this. So the reason why this became a sort of a hot button topic, right, in the last several weeks of, what is an incel, what is inceldom, all this stuff is because of the Toronto van attack where the guy ran over a bunch of people and it was supposed to be like this, angry misogyny, violence kind of thing. And that there are aspects of that are, that sort of, coincide with being incel, but that doesn't necessarily mean, and certainly from what I can gather, not in either of your cases, something that you would identify with at all, that sort of the violent attacking or acts of, quote unquote terror or misogyny or things like that, that you guys aren't really necessarily on board with that. Is that fair?
That's correct. We're not on board with any of the violence or any of the violent speech that's used on incels.me. I would assume I'll let Nick get his 2 cents in. But yeah, that's basically it. Like the forum that we're in Celistan, we, excuse me, will ban anyone that mentions violence in a way that suggests they actually have those violent thoughts or might have those.
So there's no anger with this?
I think the entire thing is based on anger, actually. There probably wouldn't be an incel. That word probably wouldn't exist if the anger didn't exist. So there's a lot of anger.
Why? Why does anger push that?
Because otherwise you'd probably just call yourself single. So to attach the word involuntary to it is kind of like a way a way of sticking it to society, saying like, society, you've also played a role in this sort of, I think. Nick might disagree with me. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I personally, the way I personally view things is anything that happens in society, you can't blame society because that's the way it is. Technically, we are the deviants from it, and we're the ones, quote unquote, that aren't normal because we can't find anyone. Do I see that as a bad thing? I mean, yeah, it sucks for us, but yeah, it's just something that I personally find it's something that if I want to change it, that falls on me. That doesn't fall on society to change. Because blaming your problems on other people gets you nowhere. You either have to do something yourself or accept it.
Sure, and I agree with Nick there that, of course, a lot of our problems do lie within, and I think almost anyone would agree with that, parts of the things that we need to change are ourselves and not other people. But usually, almost all dating advice relies on the person that is having no success dating. And it's all about that person improving themselves, that person doing therapy, that person trying harder, getting better haircuts, getting more showers. And what the term incel adds to that discussion is that it's not always everything to do with the person involved. It's not always to do with the person who has trouble dating. There's also a societal component to it, and you'll see that sort of language of a societal component on all of our subreddits, forums, whatever. I shouldn't say they're all different, but
yeah.
Do you think that this could maybe be more of a social anxiety versus like a label of incel?
Yeah, so I'd say most of our members, we did a poll in our forum asking members what they've been diagnosed with. I would say depression was the highest. Second highest was social anxiety. Wasn't much autism, but I know that a lot of people in these communities have autism. So people could fall in those traditional sort of psychiatric labels, but a lot of people have found that the mental health communities don't fix their problems. For example, on socialanxietysupport.org, .com, which is a social anxiety support website, the people that post on there are like perma-virgins, like permanent virgins. Like there's a couple resident 50-year-old virgins. All they're doing is posting about how shy they are and how they need to overcome their shyness, but they're never going to overcome their shyness. That's part of their personality.
Okay.
So I think it would be better for them to leave those communities, those mental health communities, and actually work on their underlying problems. It might be that their underlying problem might be that they are in a city with too many men and not enough women. They can't meet women. Just try to fix their underlying issues.
And that, to me, just on a different level, seems like a strange metric. To think about it in the sense of I'm outpopulated. I don't know. I've never really thought about it that way. And that could have some truth to it.
There's a thing that was touched on, I think, last week when we had our interview, talking about sort of like, given a set population of males and females, right? That like someone has to lose out, right? That was something that you had expressed, that, if there's more of one than the other, then necessarily someone's going to lose out.
And there are socioeconomic factors that come into play too.
Sure.
Yeah, or moving to a poorer area, like I brought up in the last podcast, like we do in some of our not in Incelistan, so Nick won't be able to attest to this, but in some of the other incel communities, people do recommend to each other to go to places like Thailand or Ukraine is not a good idea, but some people say Ukraine.
Sure.
The poorer countries, usually Asian countries if you're white. But Nick, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I've heard that been said, and well, I believe it would work. You would probably have a better chance of finding someone if
you mean like a mail order bride type thing.
Moving to the
what's
countries,
Thailand got to do anything?
Sorry, the exact opposite.
Got to do with this?
No, hang on. They're saying that on the exact opposite. Instead of like mail order bride trying to pay to have someone shipped to you, moreover,
but like go there and get a wife.
Yeah, go there and meet people that way.
I don't think it's the opposite. I think it's a similar process because you're going there meeting. Okay, I don't think anyone's trying to buy a wife. I can't remember if I mentioned this in the interview last week, but I used to work at TSA, and I used to know a bunch of guys that were guys that were not particularly popular or whatever. They worked at TSA. They slung bags with me, and they would save up all their overtime. They would save up all their money, and they would go to Thailand. They go to Bangkok, and like they were the most popular people there, and like women would basically throw themselves at them, know. And the idea for those women was to find a man and get the hell out of Thailand and come back to America. So that's like a strategy. I'm not kidding at all. Like I'm completely serious. This is what happened.
Just to jump in, whenever
Does Thailand suck that bad?
Yes.
Hey, Haley, welcome, by the way.
What's up, Haley?
Whenever I think of Thailand, the thing that comes to my mind is all of the like young boys who become women there. That there's like a really large population of that.
Lady
Close
boys.
enough.
Those are lady boys. That
One
they
of
have
the-
their
Oh
own
yeah,
one of the
they're
reasons
just
they do
very sexually open over there.
one of the reasons they do that, the lady boys, is they become men so that they can get money through the sex trade. Or sorry, they become women so that they can get money from the sex trade. So some of the lady boys there, they do it solely for financial reasons. But yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, you might think, okay, it's kind of scummy to go to Thailand because the people there are financially desperate. Well, the same sort of basic concept is still in play in America. If we were to move to a poor city in America, because that would increase our chances getting a partner, it's the same dynamic. It's just on a more extreme level.
It seems like you're arguing for prostitution at that point, though, because let me tell you that sex work is sex work is sex work. It's almost always born out of some form of desperation or some grasp to make money on an easy level. You know, like.
Yeah, let me be clear on what I was
I don't think
describing before.
prostitution's easy.
Well, okay,
I
sorry. I don't mean it like that. I'm sorry.
I wasn't endorsing that behavior. I was just saying it was an observation that I made of people I knew.
Sure.
And I wasn't saying go and get a prostitute in Thailand. I was saying move to Thailand, stay there, get a house there. In Bangkok, the healthcare is really good. It's better than most European countries. Stay there, have a wife. I know people that have done that. I'm not saying it's a great idea. I'm just saying it's an option for some people out there. Another option is going to a poor city in the United States.
So what you're saying not is like offer citizenship as a trade for a wife or something like that to come to America, but rather relocate to Thailand and live there and find love and happiness there, I guess.
Exactly. Or a poor American city. Yeah.
Right. I think it's an acknowledgement that whatever situation you're in, you're feeling that based on sort of the selective pressures for sexual selection of a partner, that people who are incel are coming up short, and they're thinking of ways they can change what those pressures are so that you have better odds, essentially, if you're looking at it. It's sort of a numbers.
How are you going to have better odds just because it's a poor city?
So because women like to date up in financial status. One of the hosts, I forget which
so
host.
You got money now, so the women are going to like you.
Right.
That kind of makes sense at least. All right.
Yeah, one of the hosts in the last episode, he brought up how one of the reasons he wasn't single is because he was a lawyer. Which one of you was a lawyer?
That's me.
He's a lawyer.
Kill the lawyer!
No.
Kill the lawyer.
You said one of the reasons you had a partner is because you were a lawyer, you made good money, and you had some sort of status. Those are the sorts of things women look for, and you acknowledged that when you talked about it and as to why you have a partner.
Yes, I think we're maybe misrepresenting what I said a little bit, but
but when you meet James, it's not his opening line.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like we don't normally talk about that.
When I first met James, it wasn't I'm a lawyer and here's all my status things. It was hey, how's it going? It was not a what can you bring to the table. It was just him and a girl. Nobody knows anything about anybody else.
I was going to say,
I think you would have rejected him if he made $5,000 a year. Anyway, someone else can go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was going to say, we're joined by my friend Haley here, who went to college with me and knew me when I was like dirt poor and slinging pizzas. And I still had dates and girlfriends and stuff then. It really wasn't necessarily that. But what I was getting at when I mentioned these things is they definitely do help level the playing field to some degree. Like I can see how having a higher education degree or whatever and having status symbols around you and making good money will totally show up and be something that people notice. And I'm sure that does help.
I would honestly disagree there.
Show up your good side.
Sorry. Okay.
Because if what most of us are looking for anyway is validation, if we find a woman that likes us due to something like education level, how much money we make, something like that that's not directly tied to us, then in the back of our minds, if we know that, there's not really a validation there because it's not us that she loves, it's the money, the status, it's the whatever.
I agree with you there.
To be able to have an actual genuine relationship, I don't believe status helps too much. It might help make connections, yes, but
I would agree with you.
I mean, I don't think necessarily. So, just FYI, I tried to turn my camera on, but it won't flip around for some reason. So I don't want y'all to just look at my feet.
Gotcha.
But
James making noise.
I like it whenever. I mean, my dad is a person who can fix a bunch of stuff. I've grown up with seen men being able to fix things. I've noticed that I tend to date mechanics. And or not mechanics, engineers, mechanical engineers more specifically. I don't know why, but I've dated a lot of mechanical engineers, and it wasn't necessarily because of the status, but they happened to have a good job and everything, but also they tended to be the type of people who were interested in trying to fix stuff, and I'm also interested in that, and I like that. So I just don't. I don't see like your education and your experience and things that are part of your status that's also generally part of who you are. I tend to like people who like it that I argue a lot based on my profession. So I tend to like guys who appreciate someone who argues back and challenges them, and that's also my profession in education. So I don't know.
That's a good point. That profession is part of personality, so that's something that we sometimes don't acknowledge. But I think what incels would say is that that's like sort of the only aspect of personality that is emphasized in dating for men. That's really particularly important for men. The people that are more nihilistic than me and have a more negative view of the dating market than me would say that the only things that matter to women at all would be height, face, frame, and status, and that's basically it. And then other things are a bonus, but they're not super important.
Okay, just as a quick question, Nick, how tall are you?
5'9".
Okay, just wondering. I mean, height, frame. What did you say? Face? I was gonna say I'm pretty much failing on all of those except for I'm 6'1". Like
he fails on a lot of ways.
I was gonna say I'm not.
I would just like to say
you only look 5'5".
And it's kind of to buttress what Haley was saying about she finds that she's kind of dated within the same kind of world, and I've been guilty of that too. In fact, my husband is the only person that I've ever been with, dated, married, that's not an officer in the Navy. And the reason why I'm with him is because every personality trait that I was attracted to in that group of men was, the honor and the dignity and the way they treated me, not so much how they looked, because God knows some of the guys that I dated, my friends questioned my eyesight at times, but it was the way that I was treated by these people. They lived by a code of respect. They treated their families well. They treated their friends well. They treated me well. And I was actually dating a naval officer when my current husband entered my life, and he's the one that ended up with me, but he was also displaying those types of characteristics that I personally find attractive. So I can understand kind of gravitating toward a certain stereotype or type of mate. Mm-hmm. But I just kind of came in on this conversation a little late, so I'm sorry if I say something now that is insulting. But looking at you two gentlemen, you're not unattractive gentlemen. You're very well spoken, and I'm just wondering. I mean, like, I guess the lady before me was talking, not Haley, but I didn't catch your name, was asking about psychological issues, societal issues, and I guess my question in a long-winded way is, the last time you did date someone, was there any kind of feedback that you got as to the reason why the relationship didn't work out?
Nick, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. One relationship I've been in, it kind of ended in a, I guess, rather mutual way, because it was just for a month in high school, and her dad was very Muslim, like very Islamic, and strictly didn't believe in any dating with outside of marriage, and arranged marriage, that sort of thing. Anyway, he found out about it, and that kind of ended that because, well,
Okay.
yeah,
Wait,
she didn't want to go too far against her father, so
is that the only person you've dated?
yeah.
Do you mind me asking how old you are?
Oh, I'm not that old, honestly. 21.
Okay, so
You're still young.
you weren't in high school.
Yeah,
a
you're
while
young.
ago. Yeah.
I had only dated one person when I was 21.
Yeah, I'd only dated once or twice by the time I was 21. Like,
Yeah, I'm just saying the reason I still identify
James,
as
just shut up. I don't like your shooting and grin.
I'm not
I don't like
talking.
it
I'm
at
not
all.
talking. I'm not talking. I just want to say hi, Lacey. Welcome.
Hey James, hey David, hey
Hey.
Haley, hey Melissa, hey guys. I'm so glad y'all came on. And Blair, I have not met you yet, but nice to meet you too.
You too?
I was going to ask.
Is it still saying I'm Blair?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're also Blair.
I'm Joanne. I'm sorry.
yeah.
We have two Blair accounts. I'm Joanne.
Okay,
Hi.
I'm Joanne. I apologize, Joanne. But
No. It's saying that I'm Blair, so it's okay.
got it.
Okay. Things are just popping up. This is
Yeah,
great.
she can type a thing on there and it
Okay,
pops
that's
up on the screen.
interesting.
That's cool. We ferment here too. That's part
But
of
no,
the show.
actually, Will, I'd like to kind of throw you the same question if you don't mind me being intrusive on that end. When was your last relationship? How long did it last?
So I've never been in a relationship and I've never been on a date. I've spent all my efforts trying to get a date for the last decade and haven't been able to.
How old are you?
27.
You're still
Okay.
young.
You are.
Where do you live? Oh, you don't have to answer that. Actually, that's actually kind of a personal question.
No, it's okay.
I said it in the last broadcast at DC area, like Washington DC area.
There's a lot of people there.
There's a lot of people there, but
there-
it's also, and honestly, I sort of
we all
defend
kind of
him a
weighed in
little
on this,
bit
yeah.
because I grew up in that area too, and that place is super competitive, tons of money. Like
basically, just about every woman wants the politician's son type. They want the handsome jockey dude.
but
Who's got
that's
money.
not everybody. I mean, that's sort of like a stereotype or impression that you get. Like, and it's easy to form that narrative because of how competitive that environment is.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I'm not there. Well, that and the fact that like you got to have a lot of damn money to own property there.
Well, and I mean, I also think that it starts getting harder the longer that you're going without having like a longer term relationship. I don't know. I think that probably makes it even harder and harder, to get close with someone when that inevitable question of like, how long is your longest relationship? And then I don't know. I could see that starts stopping people from being interested.
I do have a quick question. Another one. Do either one of you have any female friends that you would consider close friends that maybe you've bounced ideas off of or that have maybe possibly shown an interest in you at any time?
No, answer verbally though. Will, I saw you
No.
shaking your head.
No.
But
And no.
So you don't really.
Is it? And you haven't gone out on one date?
Yeah, correct. Almost all my efforts.
Do you go out and other social with other friends, not just
guys,
women?
hang on. Can we not?
One at a time, please, one at a time.
One at a time. Let's not rapid fire questions because it's going to be hard to follow.
Almost all my efforts have been online dating, and mostly not real life dating. So,
yeah.
I think it's harder for an average guy. I think it's pretty hard for the average guy to get dates off online dating. Most people get dates through friends and actually not through cold approaching or through bars or anything like that. So your question was a good one, which is, do I have female friends and have I able to like leverage that connection at all? And the answer is no. I think ever since I was in primary school, girls have shied away from me as a friend, and I think have sort of been using their friends as sort of like a Rolodex for potential boyfriends. I never got put on that Rolodex.
Will, another question I would ask is, do you have do you have any friends, male friends that I guess either are married or in long-term relationships or even are successful, I guess, as you would say, playing the field?
Yeah.
Do you ever go out with them to whatever social settings and whatnot?
Not to a bar or any sort of place that you're probably thinking of. It was mainly just political activism.
Sure. Do any of them ever go out? I guess either to social clubs, bars, anything where, I guess, general meetups where you have co-ed meetups where people are together.
Yeah, just not. I mean, part of the reason why I haven't had a single date is because I've basically been secluded for about a decade or so and haven't spent as much time around people in real life as other people. But I have put a lot of effort and a lot of money into online dating. And as I said in the previous episode, that online dating has really accelerated the incel movement and the incel subforms. Almost all the complaints you're going to hear on Brain Cells or incels.me are all going to be related to online dating, because that's where women are a lot more picky. Men would be picky too if they had the option, but they don't. That's where women are being a lot more picky, and only on Tinder, for example, swiping on 0.5% of the guys, for the average guy, sorry. And then on the more dating-oriented sites like OkCupid, there's still a large differential where 80% of the men are competing for the bottom 20% of the women, as judged by OkCupid's measurement of attractiveness. And women are all sort of competing for the top 20% of men.
So I have a question. I was on Tinder for a little while, and I totally was not swiping right on 0.5% of the guys. It was a lot higher.
Oh, sorry. I said that wrong. I actually said that wrong. I said the average guy. The average guy gets swiped on by 0.5% of the women.
How many?
The average guy, from what I've read, gets swiped on by 0.5% of the women that swipe. 0.5% of the women for the average guy swipe right on that guy, and everyone else swipes left. For the
So women are swiping right on 0.5% of the time.
No, actually, for the average guy, that guy is getting swiped right on 1 time out of 200 times by women, from what I've read.
That's what she's saying, I think.
I think that's, I guess what you're trying to say is that if you're a guy,
that's what averages are balanced
on the Tinder.
But here's the clarification. Tinder will load your feed with attractive dudes if that's who you only swipe on. So you might not even be swiping on the average guy. You might not even see the average guy in your feed, especially if you're a super attractive woman. You might not.
Is rigged.
Yeah, no, that is valid. Tinder's algorithm sorts people that have a higher match rate earlier. Just because they have a higher match rate, you have a higher chance of matching with them.
Oh, that's fucked up.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was on Tinder from like 2012 to 2015, and it was a fun time. I don't really know what the algorithm was, but I mean, I just limited it by geography and age, because I did get a lot of really, really old, like, I'm talking like 60s Asian men. But anyway.
Yeah,
but
those
I mean,
are the guys
that
really
was the thing is, I did keep seeing the same guys, and I'd have to like expand my circle out once I, gone through it.
Well, okay, so here's what I would say. I would say get a picture of someone who's rated like a 5 out of 10 by not yourself, but by other people, and put that as your Tinder profile. Switch your gender to male and see how often you get matched. I would say you get matched about 1 out of every 200 times or less. And then if you put up a picture of a guy that's maybe 3 out of 10 on attractiveness, he might not, your fake profile might not get any matches at all. One thing the incel community does, and that I have done, is we do Tinder experiments where we put different profiles up, different pictures up, and see which profiles get swiped on. And it'll blow your mind the way it works.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I feel as if that's a data test. I mean, on Tinder, I put the hottest picture of myself first, even though like maybe I didn't look like that all the time. And I still think you need to do that, if you're doing that. And I mean, yeah, if you're going to put up kind of like a busted ass picture of a 3, even if you are a 3 at a good angle with good lighting, you can look like a 6. And girls get drunk and get on Tinder, and yeah, I've swiped on 6s and 5s. I mean, I don't know.
Is that a thing? The numeric I think the whole problem. I think There's a meta problem here, right?
Okay, no. The numeric thing is totally a thing. We all do it naturally. I mean, it's just something
honestly,
society has taught us. Like,
not really. Mine is 0 or 1, and we all know what the question is. Are they a 0 or are they a 1? Yes or no? Yes, there are chameleons, but
is that ladder theory? I think we talked about this before, Haley. That's ladder theory.
It's just 0 or 1. Yes or no?
Yeah, that's kind of the idea of would you bang or would you not?
Whether or not it's a scale of 10 or 1 or 0 binary, whatever is what I've heard it called. Whether it's either of those things, that if you guys have identified yourselves as being sort of the bottom rung of all of this in terms of attractiveness and marketability towards a partner or whatever, maybe putting yourself in the most superficial environments possible as contrived by technology is not going to work out for you. There's probably a really good reason.
Thank you.
Yeah, that
Yes.
Tinder experiments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, Facebook is just as bad. All social media is
disgusting.
bad. They work on algorithms that are supposed to give you more of the thing that you want, right? And I've never used Tinder, but I can't imagine Tinder's any different, really. Like, that's not going to work out for you guys.
Yeah,
that's not going to work out for a lot of people, honestly. If you want something substantial,
this is something I discussed too. Is that local area Facebook groups and whatnot? You're gonna have a hell of a lot more success just going on there and being yourself and talking to people. Lace will be able to testify. Really hate. It's basically a Nashville group. I mean, there are some dog ugly people on there that are totally getting it going.
Can you explain what that is first? Because no one knows what that is. I barely know what that is.
No, I was saying I have a couple of thoughts just listening to the guys that have been, first of all, thank y'all for just coming on here and being so honest with us and open and really educating us on this and what you guys go through. And wow. But I want to say that in like listening to what y'all were, earlier people were talking about what they like and hearing you guys talk. I mean, it almost sounds like y'all don't feel confident in yourselves, not necessarily vis-a-vis women, I guess, and going on dates. And I just think that confidence is like the number one thing for me personally in men. And I guess I'm listening to you guys and y'all are good looking guys. I mean, I'm looking at your faces right here on my screen. I'm listening to what you're saying. You both come off intelligent and well-spoken. And so I just think that, y'all should not feel like
right. They say confident. Hold on a second. They say confidence is key for this, but how do you get confidence when? Okay, so like for example,
can I answer this question?
Hold on. Can I finish this?
Yeah, go,
I know where you're going, man. I want to answer this one. I'll let you finish, but I want to answer.
But please, please let Nick finish.
Yeah. So while I was up at K-State, every day since I ate 4 times a day at the Derby mess hall, like just our eating area. And I made a point to once or twice a day, every day, to go up, just, hey, find a random girl sitting alone and just talking to her. Yeah, a lot of them I didn't actually end up asking out, but I probably asked out 200 to 300 of them, and when you get negative responses on all of them, it's hard to have confidence from that.
Yeah. I guess I don't know.
Wait, someone else wanted to say something.
Yeah. But you go ahead. I had a thought, but you go ahead, Blair.
Dude, I mean, I had one girlfriend in college, and then I didn't date anybody for like a few years, and I've dated 3 people in my life. The first person I dated, it was a great relationship. The second person I dated, I married her, and it was awful. She was a horrible woman.
Don't talk about.
I'm married to Joanne, and she's wonderful. But look, I never had confidence. I was always a scrawny little, like 90-pound kid until I got to college. I never had confidence, and what I figured out in college is you just fake it till you make it. And what you're talking about, going up to the women, picking a random girl every day and going and starting a conversation, that's great, man. You also just got to realize if it doesn't work out, so what? It's definitely not going to work out if you don't keep trying.
Just FYI, whenever I was on Tinder, I mean, even if the guys weren't like to me very attractive, if they had something witty on their, like, I always like checked out their little blip on their profile and everything. It wasn't like, I don't know, like, I mean, yeah, you know, I was shopping for meat, but I still wanted it to make me laugh, you know? So,
That's so true.
Well, let me ask you guys
Meat
this. What are
hanger.
y'all passionate about?
All right.
Like, you're not going to be good looking forever.
Like,
All
do you
right.
have a passion?
I don't know.
Lace has thoughts. Hang on, I'll hear what Lace had to
Well,
say.
and I did have another follow-up question, though.
Okay.
It was just I had heard earlier y'all talking about like Thailand and moving to a place where you were talking about like the demographics of you know, the men not outnumbering the women outnumbering them. But I mean New Orleans is a very small town comparatively. It's less than 500,000 people. Even though it's considered a big city, but whenever I moved to a much bigger city, there was a lot more options on stuff like Tinder. So whenever y'all said maybe move to like a really small town or a poor town, I kind of thought that was a bad idea. I don't know.
Okay, so when we change our on Tinder, you can get a premium account where you can change where your location is.
Yeah.
You can swip from different locations. So we do those experiments where we swipe from different countries, different cities. It pretty much doesn't matter what city we pick. I mean, it matters a little bit, but it doesn't compare to certain countries, and it's not necessarily a correlation between how poor the country is. It actually mostly has to do with the fact that Asian women just love white guys. I mean, so like whenever we change our location to an Asian country, we get matches. For example, I will get matches about 50% of the time. I switch it to Ukraine, which is one of the worst countries in the world, full of white women. I'll get a match maybe 1% of the time. And in the United States, a match probably 0.1% of the time.
Well, so what else is going on in these tests? Is it just photos, and how many photos, and is there any information?
So one of the tests we do, Nicholas might have seen this, is we put pictures of good-looking guys, and then we riddle the bio saying like fake stuff like I'm a child molester, I'm a Nazi, stuff like that, and see if that affects their match rate. And it turns out it doesn't.
Oh,
it
shit.
Really.
That's pretty.
Girl's such a bad name.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
not all that vapid.
Well, but I mean,
Exactly.
have y'all done anything with like average-looking people with like obscure, witty punchlines to maybe, you know?
I mean, I'm
movies?
I'm average.
Sure, yeah.
I'm average as shit. If you guys want to use my pictures, feel free. I take terrible pictures.
I think what this actually touches on a little bit is that there's sort of an aspect of incel that relates to like being pickup artists or like pickup artists in training. I did happen to watch the YouTube video about the Shy Boys IRL and stuff like that, and talking about the one guy who was like, he called himself like a pickup artist in training. Like is that something you guys participate in yourselves, or what do you think about that?
No. That guy was horrible.
It was pretty awful, yeah. but go ahead.
Yeah, that was not a nice person.
So that guy in the documentary was not an actual pickup artist, but he was, I think, a self-described incel, but was trying to pretend he was a pickup artist to try to have confidence and go out and meet women. The biggest pickup artist place right now is called The Red Pill. It's on Reddit, and their entire philosophy basically is that women have like this primal desire to be dominated, and you need to harness that desire of theirs. I'm not promoting their philosophy because incel is a different universe, but that's what they would say. Incels mostly focus on looks and sometimes status. The Red Pill, that community focuses exclusively on status and pretending you are higher status than you actually are.
So
I'm sorry. Just
So dominance
clarify real quick. Is that what you mean by red cell or folks who are focused on being pickup artists and focused on looks and things like that? Is that what that means?
What's the word again?
Red pill.
That we use that in a million different ways, but they would use the red pill to mean that you understand that women want to be dominated, and this is how you dominate them.
And so incel. You had mentioned looks and status. Y'all, one of the factors, and I guess like your philosophical algorithm, does that take into account personality?
I think most incels would say that status is part of personality, like one of you brought up before, but face, height, physical frame, like how large your frame is, and status are going to matter infinitely more than personality. That doesn't mean that women don't have standards related to personality. Like some women will only date bassists with beards, for example, but we would still argue for those women they're going to be
Wait,
looking for
only
height.
date. What was your example? I didn't catch
Like
that.
an example would be like a woman that would only date bassists with beards.
Oh,
So there are women that have very,
bassist, like the musician.
I've met a girl like that once. She said, "I only date guys who play the bass and that have a beard." So girls can have very right. It is weird, but girls can have or a naval officer or any particular thing. So girls can have very like particular niches of guys that they go after, but they're still going to go after within that set of guys height, face, frame, and status.
Well, can I address that, because I was the one that brought up that dating history. I didn't actively seek out these particular men. That was just, of the people that were asking me out, the ones that I ended up having relationships with. And I've not always dated men that most people would consider conventionally handsome or attractive. So I kind of feel like, Lace, I think you were right. We're not all vapid. I mean, we do go after humor and the way that we are treated, and, people that are considered. It's not about looks, because I have gone out with some very good looking men and they've treated me like absolute dog shit. And I'm not going to stand for that. I don't care how good looking you are. Bye-bye. So it's not just, and I feel like you're kind, and maybe I'm getting defensive here, and I probably am, but it's not all women. I'd say the vast majority of women are not looking for someone of a particular height or of a particular career or a particular social status. What most women are looking for is someone to treat them well and that can be an equal in their life.
Oh, right.
I would disagree.
Nick,
I'll let you go real quick. I would disagree strictly on height, especially, but Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, especially when you have enough female friends that, I have enough female friends that I know I can't be a terrible person to just women in general. I'm just, for some reason, undateable. So if there's anything like height status that plays into the mix, it seems from all the data that we have that there is, and any conclusive evidence that I have for it. Well, and that might be the case.
That may be the case with the younger generation of women too. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. I'm 48, and so the last thing I'm looking for is,
Melissa, you're also like 5'2". You're tiny.
So pretty much everybody's taller than you.
I was gonna say, hang on. Let's be real about it. You're adorable, like tiny.
Well, thank you, James, but you gave me too many inches. I'm only 5 feet tall.
Okay,
but I have dated one of my best friends in high school. We dated for a while after high school while I was in college, and he was only 5'2". So I mean, I really don't. I've got a whole. None of my boyfriends are cookie cutter.
And I was going to say anecdotally, actually know several women who are within the range of about 5'10" to 6'1". Every guy they've ever dated, they've been friends of mine forever. They're all like 5'5". I mean, and they like short guys. That's their thing. One of my favorite people was married to a dude who's like 6 inches shorter than her. And when they go out to fancy dinners, she'll wear heels, and she makes it a joke to pat him on the head. And I mean, like, and they love it. Like, that's their thing. Like that, I mean. People have different things and they like different things, and that's the way it works.
I do think that they might have something with height, though.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
It's a stereotype for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, I think that should be acknowledged. I'm 5'6", and I dated someone who was 6'6" for 5 years. And any friend that I met who was, woman friend who was taller than me, kind of gave me shit for dating a one of the like, no, I could date someone who was in like the 5'8" to 6 foot range. Why the hell am I like shopping in their territory kind of thing? I don't know. So yeah, I mean,
Well,
I got a lot of shit from
Haley, if you don't
tall
mind me,
people.
if you don't mind me going this route though, that you, when we were friends in college, I think I remembered you dating a guy who was pretty damn short and being into him.
Was that Alex? Do you count Alex? Alex Longlinay as dating?
No, not Longlinay. Not Longlinay. He was like 5'11". I'm sorry. No, who was the?
Oh, Jake. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was
Thank
shorter
you.
than me.
Yeah, he was.
But I mean, yeah. But I mean, he was great.
But you liked him. Yeah, you liked him.
Yeah,
like,
I really liked him a lot.
So I mean, that is a thing.
You were
right?
attracted to him.
No, I personally don't need to date someone who's 6'6" or above 6 foot. I just happened to find some meet someone who
that's
was
attractive, I guess. Yeah.
I dated somebody who was 5'4" for a little while.
Yeah, and then when I was when I was in high school and early college, I was like 5'9", something like that.
I mean, just to get back to it, I do think that height probably does factor into it. Just I don't know.
I'm sure to some degree.
We're not saying that height is an end-all be-all, but we're saying it helps.
Yeah,
I would
agree
disagree with Nick a bit here, where it's almost an end-all be-all, because 90% of the couples in the United States, from what I've read, the man is taller than the woman. Now, men are naturally taller than women, right?
Okay,
that's above the average. If we were to match up people solely based on averages, it would be lower than 90%.
Can I say can I say something? Y'all need to move down to Louisiana where we have a bunch of Cajuns, because
they're all tiny.
Oh my God, I was a titan down there.
You have no idea. The average size male in Louisiana is like 5'6".
Yes.
I was gonna that's what I was gonna say. Like I was always taller than everyone.
I was a giant in
Serious, guys.
I'm like 6'1" and I was a giant. I'm back here in Tennessee and like dudes tower over me all the time.
I think I seriously, and I know you guys have like whole like subreddits and like a slew of memes and stuff like that. Well, you told us about like, giving people a hard time for trying to give you advice or stuff that you've already thought of.
Not giving people a hard time for giving advice, but making fun of common advice. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, hey guys, haven't you tried this? Why don't you do that? Like,
why don't you try being yourself? That works.
There's a problem where you're talking about how attractive you are. What are you doing on Tinder? How tall are you? I think it's, it's looking at, and I suggested this last week a little bit, that you're looking at the issue from the wrong perspective. You're dealing with the apparent superficiality of women in society, through the lens of superficiality. I've never had a substantive relationship that's based on anything that was superficial. Like, again, that's my own experience, but like, and yes, you can get with somebody for superficial reasons and have it turn out to be something deeper, but like that's not working for you guys, right? Like, so maybe.
I had a question though.
Go ahead.
Like, I mean, we've discussed the height thing, but is there like, whenever you start falling into, I've been rejected so many times and time continues to pass, does it become sort of cyclical in nature, where someone, if you don't have that kind of experience, like I wouldn't want to be with a virgin whenever I was in my, whenever I first had a job in the city that I moved to, and I got like a nice, job and joined Tinder and did what I did for a little while. Like I wouldn't want to meet a virgin. I'd be like, oh no. So I mean, does that kind? I mean, if you don't have that kind of base experience, if you miss out on it, perhaps, I don't know a better way to say it, and I apologize if I'm being a little offensive when I say that, but at a younger age, does it kind of sort of, make your issue in dating cyclical in nature and exacerbate it over time?
Okay, it might if we're looking for hookup. But if we're looking for an actual relationship, if we find someone that knows what's important in a relationship, they're not going to care.
So this is not limited to sex.
Correct.
So I mean, y'all are able to. So I mean, whenever I understand involuntarily celibate, I think no sex.
It's not a perfect word. There's other words that we use, but people, if we wanted just sex, we would get prostitutes. That's not the hard part. the hard part is finding companionship and a long-term relationship. So that's what you'll find constantly in these incel communities, people coming up with perfect girlfriends and obsessing about long-term relationships. It's very cute. Guys on these forums aren't like the pickup artists where they're only going for one night stands. The incel community is much more focused on long-term relationships. And we see that, and I've gotten messages from girls and from women on my Facebook saying, "Oh man, like I'm getting into my late 30s. I really want to settle down and find a nice guy because I've been dating these guys that just use me. They pump and dump me. William, can you give me advice on how to find a nice guy?" And I think we've been noticing in the incel communities that a lot of women, maybe not through a fault of their own, get paired up with guys that aren't interested in long-term relationships, but they are the most attractive people sexually. Where women sort of have a two-tier dating strategy where they first look for guys they would rather have sex with and then look for guys that they would rather settle down with. And a lot of women get caught up in looking for the guys they want to have sex with, which aren't the same guys they want to have long-term relationships with.
I think that's fair. That's a fair criticism.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think that's I think that fits.
Question.
Oh, sure.
Hold on. So,
Lacey, what?
Yeah, I have a question. So I hear you guys and apparently just listening to William talk about the stats, women statistically are, I guess, very shallow creatures, which I apologize for my gender on that. But more importantly, since y'all are so focused on what we like, do y'all have a type? I mean, I'm just asking, do you have a very specific type that would limit your dating pool, or are y'all sort of, I thought I heard someone talk earlier about, well, I could get Asian girls, but maybe not white girls. Did I might be misquoting you. I didn't quite hear.
I didn't say that exactly, but I was just saying that Asian women are particularly attracted to white men, and it's not necessarily, I'd say the Asian white guy phenomenon, which we would all acknowledge as a phenomenon.
Yeah, my little brother yellow fever is the horrible slang word everyone would call him. I mean, he dated only Asians, my little brother did, okay? So I get it.
Yeah, a part of that is, I would say, mostly that the women are lusting over the white guys rather than the other way around. It does happen the other way around, but I'd say mostly it's from my experience. I've never had yellow fever, but it's mostly my experience has been Asian women like me, particularly, and not. So go ahead, yeah.
So wait, do either of y'all have any kind of types, characteristics that y'all like?
I would say that men are superficial on weight, and you would agree with that. So men usually try to.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay, personally, I'm biased against morbidly obese women, and that's about it. Go ahead, Nicholas.
Yeah, personally for me, I try, really, if you want a genuine relationship, looks should be irrelevant. You're only appeasing one of your five senses with basing it off of looks. What I really look for is, hey, do we have anything in common? Can she have fun just being, pretty much, do we have stuff in common? Do we have similar interests, same sense of humor? Stuff like that. That's more important than just looks, because looks.
But attraction is the initial phase, though. You meet somebody based on, if you walk into a restaurant or a bar or you're online, it's going to be how they look initially.
Chemistry.
As James mentioned, I dated somebody who was shorter than me in college for a little while. He was funny in class, and I saw him personally, and it was just his personality that became attractive. If we are measuring data off of a site like Tinder, yes, there's going to be, whenever you're filtering it through that sort of medium, of course, there's going to be, the only thing that I have to base this off of is 0 or 1, and which can depend on both your photo and your little blip bio. If you're pretty funny, yeah.
I'm sorry.
So,
go ahead, well, Haley, finish up. Sorry.
I was just kind of thinking on the sort of distinction of measuring women's vanity, whatever how they judge men, it's sort of hard. You're putting it in a vacuum whenever you're basing it off of something like Tinder, because that is inherently going to be based off of things like physical looks and features. So I don't know, that was just my 2 cents on that.
The reason why we use Tinder studies is because when people say, "Oh, try Tinder," we have data to back up why we can. Or we technically can, but it just won't work.
Sure. Okay, so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt too hard, but I actually do have a few friends watching this who are available women in this area that are curious about how this works. The area that we live in, which is a small town in Tennessee. And one of them is a mother of 3 children, a single mother. And she asks really kind of the question of, well, I guess she really posed and said that she's really much more concerned about personality and commitment than she is about what you look like.
A single mother would, yeah.
So the question becomes there: are you ruling single mothers out? Like, is this something that you don't want someone with children because you don't want to be involved with their children or anything?
Those of us without the financial ability to raise 3 children.
Okay, look. Well, hang on. Wait. Let me stop you there, because again, you're talking about somebody who's already raising 3 children on her own, and she's been doing it for years. So she's got the financial end buckled down. Are you worried about her having children and having to accept the responsibility of dealing with her children if it were to be a long-term thing? What goes on there? Do you consider them untouchable? Like, are they something you're not interested in, or someone you're not interested in simply because they have children?
Nick, I'll let you get in on this, but I've messaged back women who are single mothers, and they do tend to be more attractive than the single, non-married or the women that don't have children, because they are looking for, they're willing to date down more than women who aren't single mothers. And I don't turn them down. I still message them back. What I notice is that what I'm guessing here, and this might be an unfair analysis, what I'm guessing is that these women often divorced their previous husband because he was not financially stable. Not always. Sometimes it's because he was unfaithful or whatever. But sometimes the women file over 75% of the divorce papers, and financial problems are the #1 predictor of divorce. So if I hear divorced women, what I hear, my alarm bells go off. What I hear is, I'm not taking full responsibility for the children. There was a guy before me who fucked up. I'm looking for a new guy. And what we call it beta bucks, where you're a beta guy and you're feeding dollars, which is fine. I mean, I acknowledge part of being a partner.
That's really funny.
Hang on, wait.
Actually, can I speak to this?
Yeah, wait, I just want to do so on a family law level really quickly. In the state of Tennessee, there are 2 grounds for divorce. It is adultery or irreconcilable differences. There is no other metric to measure it by, and
I have a study. I can link it. I mean, the most common predictor of divorce is financial insecurity, and that's
that's the main reason why couples fight.
I'll be back in a minute. Have to go to the bathroom.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
I guess one of the things I was going to say, though, in my experience, because I'm dating a woman who is divorced and has a child, and it was very clear immediately that the last thing she needed from me was my money. In fact, and again, I'm speaking anecdotally, but I have to more or less have to fight her if I'm going to pay for a meal when we go out to dinner, because she's extremely financially independent. And you're going to find that, especially of single mothers. You're there because you really want to be there. And I think that's what women in that situation are mostly going to want to see. And I'm speaking in generalities here. You're going to have people who, yes, maybe someone's looking for a sugar daddy.
Sure, you can.
Someone only cares about your physical looks or how tall you are, things like that. Yeah, stereotypes exist for a reason, but
you can pull trailer trash out of the trailer park that need a baby daddy to pay for.
Come on.
But I'm just saying, I've never seen that and I play the field a little bit and everything. I've never seen a single mom who is looking for somebody to pay the damn bills. They're covering that themselves. I've never seen that.
Right.
And
that's just my experience, though.
I mean, guys, can we not act totally shocked by that premises, though? That premise, though. I mean, yeah.
Sure, it could exist.
I mean, sometimes single moms want someone who can help them out financially. That's not shocking or anything.
I agree.
So
Not all.
I guess
Well,
in
I
my
have a
general
question. I have a question about that since we're talking about it. Does it happen that when you see someone is a single mother, instead of asking her or getting to know her better to gauge what her expectations are, or do you give her the opportunity, or do you just automatically say, well, she's a single mother, no go, no bueno?
The last single mother I talked to lived in Maryland, which is a state away from where I am, about 2 hours. She seemed willing to date me until I brought up the fact that she was 2 hours away and expressed that might be a concern to me. And then she stopped messaging me. I didn't stop messaging her. So almost all the women I talk to, they ghost me after a certain amount of time. But my situation is unusual, where my problem is shyness. So I don't talk enough to women outside of the online sphere. I think that the online sphere is kind of a death, it's sort of a really bad place for average guys to go to, or less than average guys to go to. I would suggest, if I were to take my own advice, I would go more outside online dating and more into real life, because women do become more open to guys who aren't 10 out of 10s or 9 out of 10s simply by being around that person for a long time. They get more comfortable.
Well, this is a question that I had for you, William or Will, or
William. Yeah.
Okay. So how long do you message with someone on whatever app you're talking to them on?
Until they ghost me, usually, or until I feel like it's going nowhere.
So, like, what's the average time frame, though?
Last time, actually, it's been a while since I online dated seriously, but last time, for people I was serious with, it was probably like 2 days was probably the longest.
And did you ever like set up arrangements to meet during those 2-day time frames?
No, so that's part of that's something I could work on is putting a date and time earlier in the conversation process.
Yeah, and once again, I know that I've talked about shopping for meat and whatnot, but like I made a point after a while, just if you message someone and you figure out their name, don't like just immediately like just set up a time to meet if they've like if it's been fine, the sooner the better, just because if you talk to someone for longer than just I don't know, it becomes really superficial. It's not, it's just this phone person that and you can just switch the people out. You can sort of change them out on someone who you're just talking to on this app. But I don't know, just setting up a meeting time.
If you message people too early, it comes off as kind of creepy. But I guess that depends on I guess creepy is dependent on looks, but anyway, not.
Well, I don't know. The person that I'm recently married, I met on Tinder, and whenever he and I matched, it was on a Sunday night before Game of Thrones started, and he messaged 3 girls. 2 of them didn't one of them didn't respond. And he asked like, "Hey, are you excited about Game of Thrones?" And one of them was like, "Yeah," and then never responded. And I responded with like a paragraph long message of like, "Yeah, I am fucking excited." And then I went into a very in-depth fan detail. And then he was like, "What are you doing tomorrow?"
Y'all, that's my homie Haley. Yeah.
But it's something that on the very first Tinder message that I sent him, I was like, "Jon Snow's a Targaryen. We're gonna figure it out." And and then whenever it happened, like 2 years later on Game of Thrones, he was, was like, "Yeah, you're a nerd."
But no, I think you make a great point there in the sense of if you match with someone, if they think you're attractive, they like something about you, one of the first things you should probably pursue, and I've never had the chance of using this, and we talked about this before. William, I'm sorry. We talked about this before. I really will set up a Tinder account because I just kind of want to see what happens.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
but I think you should. I think
I'm sure the woman you're dating will be.
What I'm saying is, if you match with somebody, one of the first things you should be pursuing is trying to set up some way to meet in a public place where you guys can talk in person. Because
I think I liked that. The first question was, just like a general question that might start a conversation. See if the person's actually engaged. See like does the person not respond? Do they say yes? And you know what? I feel like I'm giving y'all advice, and I hate that, but I just know from my experience, it was if you message someone and they were just like, yeah, I'm doing well, period, or whatever. Like, okay, let's like try to force this conversation to keep going on, or like, hey, I matched with your profile. You seem interesting. Like, here, like, let's talk, and then immediately set up a meeting.
Yeah, I have a really bad feeling that if I do this Tinder thing, my profile is going to be really snarky, dumb bullshit that I write. That's just
I mean, I mean,
portmanteaus and
what are
weird.
Okay.
No, but I want to get back to Nicholas and William's experience. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you've talked to someone for 2 days or something, but was it like, I don't know.
Instead of sort of, like hyper focusing on what was your experience with this? What did you say to that? How far did it go? And, and what your number of, success, number of failures really are, quote unquote, when you're pursuing people this way or that way. Like, so you've identified all the ways in which things are not working out for you guys. Is there, and I think that's why we're coming around and invariably, and I'm sure it's probably at least slightly irritating, like trying to give like some advice or suggestions or try to change your perspective a little bit. But like, do you see a way out of where you are? Are you resigned to it? What do you guys like? What do you want?
Yeah, personally, I'm done trying. It's just been a waste of time up until this point. Why should I try to continue wasting my time when I could put it towards other stuff? And plus, if I think about it, what I really want in a relationship is more of just a like deep kind of emotional bond, which it's hard to get with anyone else but a significant other. But I feel like if you have enough friends that you're very close with, it can be almost as good. So for me, I'm good at making friends, so I decided it's best for me just to meet other guys and just see if I can make good friendships out of that and get like more satisfaction interpersonally with that, and then just otherwise spend time devoted focusing on work, hobbies, etc.
And
I'm
there's
trying to get away from focusing on this, but
And there's a whole community devoted to what Nicholas is doing. I don't think he would put himself under this label, but guys who have given up on the dating market and don't plan on dating anymore, there's a whole community of guys like that out there that have started their own organization. It's called MGTOW. I didn't get into it in the last podcast, but MGTOW stands for Men Going Their Own Way, and it's like a male separatist movement. They're very extreme. But you know how there used to be a female separatist movement, but back in like the old feminist days, where women like declared war on men. They're like, we don't want to date them. We're all lesbians, that sort of thing. Not every woman did that, but some women did that. That's happening now with men. Men are like a lot of men are just saying, we're done, we're going. And there's this new thing called MGTOW. So
MGTOW.
where I disagree with MGTOWs though are a lot of them focus. It's more voluntarily on, and they focus on stuff like marriage and equality, the stuff like that I'm not going to get into tonight because that'll just derail this conversation. But, while they focus on that, I'm more of just by force having to give up. Well, not having to give up, but practically yes.
So I've been talking to y'all, and both of y'all seem very interesting. And I'm sure you hear like, well, why? Like why haven't you been able to? And I, don't see any reason why y'all wouldn't be totally deserving of a very intimate relationship. So at this point in your experience, though, in the formation of these communities, is a part of it, is a part of like how y'all feel? Is it women's fault that you're in?
Sorry, let me just. So you said a dangerous word that a lot of us kind of fall into. It's the word deserve. Like a lot of us just, it's a human thing. Every human feels like they deserve love of a peer and significant other. That's something we feel like we all deserve. But at the end of the day, what did we do to really deserve it? be
All right.
born.
Well, and I mean, you're part of society. You and I are talking right now. Obviously, you're not just living alone in your house. We're engaging. So, but is the fact that you don't have this intimate relationship? We've discussed various reasons, but is part of it? Do you feel is it women's fault?
Personally, like I said before, you can't blame society. Well, okay, playing the blame game is useless. Whose fault it is irrelevant. If you want to change it, look at the easier one to change. Is it easier to change the majority of women's perspective, or is it easier to change something about us?
So then, not necessarily blaming women, but blaming the societal perspective that women generally seem to have.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to place blame, yeah, I would place it there, because blaming the individual for being themselves is kind of weird.
Yeah, but I mean, sorry, go on.
I would say most incels blame themselves more than anyone else, which is why there's so many suicides, excuse me, in our community, and why the community has sort of devolved in sort of like a suicide cult. Not in Celistan particularly, but almost any other incel space. So all of the mass murderers have been murder-suicides too, and those aren't the only examples. But the largest incel forum is called Brain Cells. It's on Reddit. You might have gone there before. If not, it's fun to check out just to laugh. A lot of people there are really funny. But there's suicides there constantly, and guys will live stream it sometimes.
Honestly though, the best thing, like, I had a area where, okay, I didn't try to flat out kill myself, but I just put myself in a situation where I should not be alive anymore, and let's go for it. So, sheer luck, I lived, and honestly, that's probably the best experience I had. Weird to say, but I feel like I came out of it not taking things so seriously.
Interesting. That's an interest. Both of the. That's really. It was an interesting point, but that was also a really interesting point, William.
Y'all are gonna make me cry. That's so sad.
I've tried to kill myself before as well, so I'm in that boat.
That's so sad, guys.
I mean,
yeah, I mean,
that really.
Not to bring the podcast down.
No. Hang on, no.
Yeah,
I think those are valid points to raise, and I mean, obviously, that hits us all really pretty hard.
Well, what we've done in the communities has been sort of building a joke about it. So I would recommend just to check out these communities. So the best one to check out is reddit.com/braincells. You'll find that we're constantly joking about suicide.
And if it's helpful, I mean, that's a good thing.
That was kind of what my question was getting at. I mean, is this? Do you consider this incel, movement that you're a part of something that's, bringing positivity in your life? In addressing this,
I was about to ask the same thing, Haley.
Okay.
Yeah. So my problems, when I brought up trying suicide, all that stuff, that all started before I was even aware of the incel community. I just saw it, and I saw these guys complaining about depression, suicide, not having any success whatsoever. I was like, these guys get me. These guys are talking to what my problems are more than any psychiatrist, more than any mental health forum. Like these guys are having the exact same problems I have to a T. Now, at the same time, these communities are toxic. They're not the best communities in the world by any measure. I would actually some of them to shut down. That's why Nicholas and I are involved in one that's a lot more tamer. We invite girls in. We've gotten people matched up, sort of. So I think our community is pretty good, but most of them, like you said, or hinted at, are pretty toxic.
So you had mentioned earlier that you think involuntarily celibate is not a good, inaccurate description. Have you all thought about a better one?
No, I typically Yeah, I think personally might as well keep the label because it literally means just involuntarily celibate. So everyone that falls under this label only has that one thing in common. Other attributes like who do I be angry at? Who am I upset? Am I actually upset? All of these, am I violent? Am I suicidal? All of these things are
Well,
particular to the individual.
what's confusing to me though is whenever I hear involuntarily celibate, I do limit it to sex. I don't think about it from the broader perspective, the broader understanding that I've gained from talking to y'all. Of it's really involuntarily, a lack of a deep emotional connection with a someone of the opposite sex.
Haley's,
So-
that rolls off the
nailing
tongue
that.
well.
And the term for that, the acronym we use for that, what you just brought up, is TFWNOGF, which is that face when no girlfriend. And Nick, you've probably seen this before, and we use that acronym all the time. In meetings.
Wait, was it that face with no girlfriend?
That face when no girlfriend.
Yeah, TFW and.
Oh, that face when.
Yeah.
That gets me.
That's good. Yeah,
I got it.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is the same problem I had actually, and I talked about this with Will in our interview. I think last week or whatever it was, when I actually saw Incel and all this on Left Book, and this was a big thing for me where I was like, are you guys just making fun of people who can't get laid? I was like, that's really shitty, and you're all terrible human beings, and fuck Tumblr and fuck everything else you're doing. And then I realized that this is actually a term that the people who identify as incel made up. This was their own term. I thought this was some dumb shit that Tumblr gave us with their 50,000 other genders with like wolfkin and catkin and gerbilkin and whatever the fuck else. I thought the incel was something they made up as an insult for guys who couldn't get laid.
Well, William, you had mentioned that you find certain incel groups toxic. Are that face when no girlfriend, that kind of community, is that something as toxic? I'm just curious.
That's just an acronym that the various incel communities use to express frustration at not having a long-term relationship. But like I said before, the communities that emphasize only the communities that emphasize only having sex and only having one-night stands, those are the pickup artist communities. The incel communities are not pickup artist communities. We are not trying to find ways to game women, to game the system. We try to understand women. We try to understand why they're rejecting us, but we don't try, at least as much as the pickup artist communities, to game women. So
that seems like a non sequitur. Whenever you're utilizing these Tinder profiles with really hot dudes who say like I'm a Nazi in their profile, but I mean, that seems like it seems like it doesn't fit that data.
What we're trying to do there is we're just trying to show, hey, this is why, because everyone under the sun says, hey, try Tinder. But
no,
so it's a validation data.
I would say it's also.
Sorry. It's
one at a time, guys.
No, let William go.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I would say it's also a response. It's the reason we make those specific tests with the people in their bios saying that we are a Nazi, we're a child molester, with hot guys with that in their bios. The reason we do that is we put it in image form, we put it in meme form, and we just save those on our hard drives and copy and paste that whenever anyone says personality matters an enormous amount, and we just put that meme up and say, here's a guy that got matched with 600 women saying that he was a child molester and was a Nazi.
So it's a defense mechanism.
It's a way to make people feel bad for saying that personality is the sole determiner.
It's a defense mechanism.
It's a version of proof that women are shallow and they don't actually give a shit. They're just looking for meat. It's meat shopping. You want the nicest cut of meat you can get, and you don't really care about anything else that's skirt steak.
Please don't use my phrase.
Hey, but that's what they're doing.
James likes to co-op.
But that's what they're doing.
No.
Lawyer tactic. I borrowed your own stuff.
I mean, if it's not about like understanding the rules of the game, why are you running these tests
I mean,
if
those tests are working and
well, I mean,
it's
personally,
about understanding the rules of the game. Absolutely, it's just not about tricking women into liking you. So we're trying to understand the rules of the game. Absolutely, but we're not trying to game the system like the pickup artists, and we're more focused on trying to find ways to either change society or find reasons why we're giving up on finding long-term relationships.
Well, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point that you said, giving up, just because.
I'm interrupt you for a second. I just want to say, guys, I have to peace out. I have an early flight. I have to be at the airport at like 5 a.m. But William and Nicholas, thank you so much for coming on tonight, and it was really nice talking to y'all.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Good night, Lacey.
Good night, guys.
I have a present for you.
Well, she left.
All right. Well, no, it was just, hold on. I had, there was this train of thought. If you're, running these kinds of tests on Tinder so that you can use it off of, I mean, I don't understand the purpose of doing these things other than to sort of defend and validate against why you think people aren't liking you, because these tests are inherently designed to go against, it's just about looks. It's just about height and how wide your shoulders are and everything, because obviously the personality plays no part, since the one personality is, and they're a Nazi. I don't see why these tests are necessarily valid to not be, from what I'm understanding is y'all's position in Incel.
What was the question again? Sorry.
Like, why are y'all using these inherently
they're not using
superficial?
I think that's what they're saying is that what Will is saying is that they're not using them. They've run these tests essentially to prove that they don't work.
But
they're proving a point. They're proving a point that you meet shop, that women meet shop. That's the entire point. They don't look at your profile. They don't read what you say. What they read is what you look like in your pictures. And it doesn't matter if you say, I'm a child molester, I rape children in your profile.
How is that
they don't notice
valid, since that is obviously something that we all know? There's a reason why famous people exist. How is the fact that you can, have
that pretty people get swiped the other direction? That's what they're getting.
How is that valid to this particular movement?
Oh, right. Okay. This is why it's valid, because right, Tinder is, at the end of the day, it pretty much is just a hookup app. But it's more of just a defense of everyone telling me, because pretty much all of my friends have continuously said, hey, use Tinder. No, it doesn't. And normally, okay, if it's people online, I just ignore them because who cares? But if it's people that, like me personally, if it's people who are genuinely trying to help, I don't want to be a dick and just wave them off. I just want to be like, oh, here's some data of why it doesn't work.
Okay, all right, I understand.
Anecdotally,
I was going to say, it sounds to me like they're just experimenting to see
William was going to say something.
And we're not constantly doing these tests. Like, I actually, for example, have never done too many of these tests. Actually, the first test I did was accidental. I was using Tinder. I accidentally put up a pic that wasn't me, and I started getting matches like crazy. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then I was like, oh, it's not me in the picture. It's this buff dude. So that was the first kind of like shock to my system. Like, okay, what women are telling me works doesn't necessarily work on Tinder, at least. So to give you guys some credit, I would say that you guys are, women and men are less superficial in real life. Okay. But online, people are just as superficial as we allow them to be. Tinder allows women to be as superficial as they want, and they're the selectors. Men aren't the selectors on Tinder. So they're going to be infinitely superficial. If men were in that position, if they were the ones selecting, we'd be infinitely superficial, but we're not in that position.
That's interesting to hear, just because I never really thought about it as the women were always, like, I know that Bumble was created so that women could kind of have the pick on the online dating thing I never really got. I don't know. Like, it's interesting that you say the women are the ones doing the picking, since I know that apps have been created to specifically designed for women to do the picking, because it. I mean, especially to me, it kind of seemed like the men were.
It depends what the demand and supply is. So on Tinder, would you say there's a higher? Would you say the demand, if you to think of it like economics, would you say that the demand side is on the men or on the women?
Probably on the men.
Right. So the supply, especially if there's more demand than supply, that supply is going to be picking the demand. So if you have, so let's say one woman has 5 guys coming up to them in real life, she's the person that's picking. The guys aren't picking. They're showing
It's a seller's market.
They're dancing around. They're trying to get her attention.
Yeah.
But she's the guy. She's the person that picks.
But I mean, I don't find, just on my own personal experience, I knew that you could like move the app around to different cities, but I was never in those cities, so I can't gauge how successful I would be. But I like in Houston, at least, it seemed as if the men were on way more demand than the women.
I gotta go. I just wanted to say good night.
Melissa, thanks for coming on. We'll see ya.
Is that not generally the case?
I would say even if on Tinder, if there were more women than men by like 2%, the reason why women are the selectors is an evolutionary reason, because women used to be super selective because she could have died during childbirth, and that sort of mentality has remained with women until now, and it's still part of, I think, your brain, is where you act super selective even when you don't have to, and when you act selective, you are the selector. Okay, so if men were to be selective, we would be the selectors, but we can't afford to be selective.
I don't know how. I can't necessarily follow, just because if Tinder is a hookup app to meet someone to bone, and a part of my brain that's developed because I've died in childbirth, wouldn't I not want to meet people that I have sex with? Because that naturally would lead to the condition that'll kill me.
I would say that if we're going to talk about evolutionary basis of how women should...
Well, I mean, that's where you went.
That's going way down a rabbit trail.
I think that's an interesting place.
Those are sort of competing impetuses, a partner that will take care of me, and child rearing, all that stuff, and a partner that it looks
let's bring the conversation back a bit, Raz, because this is a whole other topic.
I think we're getting sort of the wrap up phase here. It's already 10. It's almost 10:30 here. It's probably later for you, right? I know Will is 11:30 there, and we should be getting to wrap up soon. But I think part of what you guys are expressing, talking about, we spent a lot of time just talking about Tinder and dating apps and like these things are set up to select for the most superficial things, and you guys have made it perfectly obvious that when you are put in an environment where those are the selective pressures are the most superficial attributes, that you're going to lose out, so to speak. Like, so we should have stopped talking about Tinder an hour ago, is basically the way I think about it. You guys should probably stop talking about Tinder ever. Yes, they suggested you say, Tinder doesn't work out for me, I need to go do something else. This is the like that book about like changing your job and stuff, my cheese is moved kind of thing. Like, if I'm doing a certain behavior and I'm not getting the results that I want, I need to change the behavior, because that's the definition of insanity, right? Is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. If you go and try to strike up a conversation to pick up a woman to have a date with 300 times, 1,000 times, whatever. There was that Shy Boys IRL talking about this guy's quantified. He's like 2,000 or 3,000 rejections or something like that by the time he was like early 20s or whatever he said it was. Like, you're doing something wrong. You need to be trying something else. I would never in my fucking life get to 3,000 rejections before I thought to do something different.
Sorry.
The guy who had 3,000 rejections, you know what he eventually did to get a girlfriend?
What?
After that documentary was made, he moved to China and he found a girlfriend.
Jesus. Well, I mean,
I just don't think that's the answer. I don't think like moving to Asia is the answer.
I'm not even white, so that doesn't work for me.
Right.
Oh, hang on. What I was going to say about this is I do think there is some wisdom to moving to like a rural area or something, where, like, again, like Will said, he lived in the DC area, and you know, the core playing field of what the standard
It's
woman in
rough
the
out
area
there.
is looking
I
for.
get it.
Yeah, they want the senator's son. You know,
Yeah.
they want somebody who's beautiful and rich and blue-blooded, and like, okay, you're in a
Drives a
shitty,
BMW,
you're in a very
you know,
shitty area for that.
or a Cadillac.
Yeah.
Well, so I have a question.
Okay.
So I'm starting to understand more about, you know, just the group incel, but I guess it would be nice if, you know, do either of y'all have kind of a definition of what is like the common denominator and philosophical platform of the group? Just I'm having a hard time figuring exactly what it is.
Being involuntarily celibate.
But we already said, I mean,
that's kind of what we were talking about. Yeah.
Y'all already talked, like, you can have sex, like, it's fine, you know, like, so celibate is,
Yeah, they could
you
have
already said
sex.
that was an imperfect
We
word.
use that. Okay.
No, okay.
Let me jump in here real quick. We use sex as a marker for success, right? So it's easy. It's just a symbol of success intimately. We could call it involuntarily without a girlfriend. It's just longer. Okay. We're not entirely focused on one night stands. If we were, we would either get prostitutes all the time or we would join the pickup artist community. It's a different thing. I would also say real quick before Nick, you might want to say more, is that incel itself is just a label. It's just a label people use. It's not necessarily a community. I know the media is saying that, but there's millions of different communities out there. It depends what community you're talking about, what the philosophy is. Most of them abide by a philosophy called the black pill, which is not something that I always advocate, but I did talk about it a little bit earlier when I said women care particularly about height, face, frame, and status, and that's about half of what the philosophy of black pill is. It just depends what the community is, what the philosophy is.
Would you, and this may be a good question to close on, would you based on your experience, because I have almost no experience with this myself, in terms of the demographics of these groups, I understand that incel is a sort of a big catch-all, right? Because you could talk about, you know, guys like you who just don't have girlfriends, you want to have like a real relationship that's meaningful, that, yes, I'll also include sex, of course, but like that's not the only thing, right? Versus the black pills and the violent misogynists and, you know, the pickup artist types. Like, where do you sit demographically? Are the majority more like you, or is the majority something a lot more problematic?
It wasn't always like this, but the majority right now are the toxic types. That's why we created a community that's a bit different than the toxic types. If you want to have the toxic guys in here, you'll have a ball. They're very extreme, and they will get on your nerves constantly. I can give you links to some of those guys. And they hate women. They hate them with a passion.
Yes, I'm
Great.
None of us are interested in that. Thank you. That's a hard pass. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so what we did was we created a different community that still uses the incel label. There's been communities before our community that used it in a peaceful way. The first 3 incel forums in the 90s all used it the way that we do. We just use it to mean strictly involuntarily celibate. We don't all hate women. We don't all fit the various toxic bullet points. That I would say that our community specifically is pretty much a bunch of hipsters, mainly, honestly, and women and men, and that's sort of the unifying thing.
I got you.
I wish y'all the best of luck, though.
Yeah, for real.
I mean, y'all seem like great guys. So I'm sorry that you want something and it's not working out right now. Hopefully it will one day.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too, and I think that's something Will and I talked about, or all of us talked about.
Yeah,
it's like,
and it's. I mean, I almost feel bad because it turns right back into, hey, let's give you advice on what.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that.
Y'all seem like decent folks, you really do.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds dumb.
Cool,
what it really is I wish you guys lived in
the.
I wish that you guys lived in the area. I'd love to take you out drinking and have a good time, and hell, introduce you to some women and do some stuff.
I hope y'all are happy.
You know.
Yeah, I also live in the shittiest town in the States for dating. At least that's what a lot of articles say. But at least
what
a
state
lot of
is
articles put like Wichita, Kansas, and like.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Yeah, you should come down. We're in Columbia, Tennessee here. I'm sure you can find a date just because you have all your teeth.
Yeah, I was just
Actually,
about to say,
and that's me.
Nicholas is the most popular.
Not only that, but there are I think there is some wisdom in the idea of like rural areas, but not. I wouldn't go like dirt poor rural. Or
I don't know, guys. I had a lot of success in Houston. I'm just saying.
I think Nicholas,
Haley, shut up.
I think Nicholas can do pretty well because he's the most popular guy. I would say in our community. That's why he was able to find a girl in there and lose his virginity to her. Also, I see girls constantly hitting on him there. So I think that Nicholas, you can have a lot of success if you maybe
moved out of extremely white Kansas.
Yes, yeah, I mean, sure.
Yeah.
I think both of you guys are pretty attractive dudes. I mean, like,
Don't get gay on him.
Hey, Haley, shut the fuck up. I'm done with you.
Hey,
I'm muting your ass, Haley. We're done with you. Anyway, no, I mean, for real though, like, obviously, again.
But again, I know that Lacey said it earlier, but yeah, this was a really interesting conversation, guys. So I really appreciate y'all opening up my mind to it. I definitely learned a lot. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That was cool.
All right,
I think that's a pretty good.
That's actually probably a pretty good note for us to wrap the on-air part.
Did you guys have any ending comments that you wanted to include or anything like that? Or are you pretty good? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So I think
no one asked you, Haley. Jesus fucking Christ!
Why are you yelling at me?
We're in that phase. This is what happened to
Well, actually,
friends
I have a microphone that finally works, so I can yell into it. It's kind of great.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
We just got upgraded.
Night, Haley.
Yeah, thank you guys again for coming on. It takes some courage to come here and just be in public and talk about these things.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate it.
We're
appreciate your time.
We're gonna be in public a lot because we got media requests, quite a few.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yes.
And if you're looking to be found, if you're interested in that, if you've got upcoming engagements, this is sort of the time to drop that sort of thing. Or if you want to be contacted on an email or your Twitter account or anything like that, this is the time to plug yourselves if you're interested.
Well, you can find us all if you want to. We let in anyone that we think might not try to hurt us. Our community is Incelistan. It's sort of a jokey name. INCELISTAN. You just type that into your Facebook search bar, and you'll find us there.
Excellent.
Very cool. Very cool. And you said you had someone approach you from a media outlet. Do you want to talk about that or no?
I've gotten multiple media requests. The next thing I'm going to do is French national TV on the story that they're doing.
Oh, cool.
And my friend did CNN and NBC. We're trying to divvy up the media.
Oh, awesome.
Good luck.
Very cool. Very cool. I wish you the best of luck. Absolutely.
Definitely. Guys, again, I don't want to echo everybody else, but thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. I think
and I guess we'll go ahead and wrap. I'm David Papiden.
I'm James McVeigh.
And we are Fermenting Opinions. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.